Hey friends, I was a little under the weather the last few days, but I'm finally recovering. I apologize if my voice is a little off, but hopefully we can get through this video. It is the first video of the year. I want to talk about goals real quick, and then we'll get to designing something. A couple things before we get into it. I did launch a newsletter a couple weeks ago, which I am very happy about. You can sign up for free in the link in the description below. Also, if you haven't taken advantage, I'm still offering free 30-minute mentoring sessions, which you can also sign up in the description below. So this year, very simply, my goal is consistency. I shifted from permalance to project-based freelance, which really just means that I could work on my own schedule. One thing that I want to be consistent about is napping, but I don't want to cap it. I want to nap at 1 p.m. and just see what happens. It could be 30 minutes, it could be 10 hours, the world may never know. It's kind of like when you go to Target or Home Goods and you just let the universe tell you what you need. Last year I said, let's see how it goes. This year I'm changing it to, let's see where it goes. I like the idea of where because it's suggestive of a journey. There are so many things that happen throughout the year, both good and bad, and I just want to embrace all of it. In our quest for design perfection, we should appreciate all of life's beautiful imperfections along the way. That is my nugget of motivation for today, so let's design something, or rather redesign something. It's a little involved, but simple, and it's mostly a refresher from all the content that I posted last year. I ate at a restaurant called Social Inn when I was in Chicago. I did not love the menu. Here's the menu. It's not bad. I want to preface that this is a case where a redesign isn't fully necessary. I'm just viewing it with fresh eyes and found things that I would change. So here is my assessment. The first thing that caught my eye was the contrast. When I do these redesign videos, I'm pretty thorough about it. I check the contrast against usability standards. It did pass, but for my aesthetic, I like the contrast to be a bit stronger, so this is a case of preference, not right or wrong. Some details, this line at the top doesn't reach the full length, but the bottom one does. I think it should just be consistent. There's contrast between them, but it's not that strong of a contrast, so I think it can be pushed further. I think the use of color in the icons draws too much attention to them. If you look at them closely, they don't actually match as a set. The gluten-free icon feels alarming to me. The bear for kids is cute in an adorable sense, but I don't think it's a universal icon to be that recognizable. There's also only one kids item, so is it even necessary? The logo in the background is sides for the blind and the hearing impaired. I apologize to anyone who is blind or hearing impaired, but presumably you're not watching this video. The logo is centered within the page. The text should also be centered, but the balance is being thrown off because the icons create an inset to the left. The inset is fine. The solve would be to remove the logo from the background so it's not apparent that it's off center. In terms of alignment, all of them are used. We have a centered logo and subheads, left aligned menu items with right aligned pricing. The right aligned is fine. My take is that it shouldn't be inline, meaning text shouldn't run underneath the pricing. At the bottom, the icons are center aligned, and then both right and left aligned text that's anchored towards the center. The line above should technically be centered, but it isn't. Under the icons, there are footnotes, but they're both using a single asterisk. Perhaps one is a double asterisk to differentiate. The one on the right isn't really a footnote. It's kind of odd to put it in quotations. Overall, the design could use a lot more white space. In terms of type, I think the condense is really hard to read. Reminder that proper line length for readability is 45 to 72 characters. The longest line in the menu is 68 characters. It's veering too many characters because of the condensed typeface. It's actually a lot of things I would change, which is why I chose to redesign this, because it's a good example on how to analyze your own designs. I actually couldn't rebuild this. I didn't want to purchase the typeface since I don't really have a use for it after this video. I did type everything out at least. It is a big menu for sure. The menu seems to be cuisine agnostic, so it's kind of endless possibilities when it comes to our design. My opinion would be very different had I spoken to the owner to get some background on the restaurant, because then I could at least create a brand statement to ladder off of. So what can we do? I'm going to start with just a super clean update of the menu. I seem to be on a Swiss poster design era at the moment, so let's try it out. Since the idea here is to simply clean it up, I do want to stay true to the aspects of the original styling. I'll keep the logo the same as well as the line. They had another line above the footnotes, but I think the second line will better serve at the very bottom to anchor everything. I also mentioned that I wanted contrast, so we'll make that thicker. Now we style our text. I want to change the subheads for each section. I think it's easier if it reads appetizers, salads, mains, etc. Alright, so Helvetica is the classic Swiss typeface, but the original typeface is Neue Haas Grotesk, so I'm using that instead. For the subheads, they use bold and all caps, so I'll do the same. Since we've separated the subheads through typography, we can remove the colon. The menu items and the price are both bold, but the price is right aligned. The description is in a lighter weight, and then I just want some space below. Let's use some YouTube magic and style everything. Alright, Swiss design has a structured grid. The columns here are too wide, so I'll adjust to 3 columns evenly. Things aren't lining up at the current moment, but look how much space we've created. This entire third column is almost empty. We could fill up the rest of the space with their signature cocktails. Let's zoom out a bit so you can see what's going on. We want a super clean grid, so I'll align that to match the bottom of the second column. There is this gap. Let's zoom way in. If you remember earlier, there was that disclaimer about consuming raw food. It can fit here since we're ending the food items. I don't want to match the styling of the menu items, so we can create emphasis here by using italics, also breaking the alignment, so I'll make it centered, and then fix the rag. For further separation from the drinks, we can add a line. Layout is looking really clean. We have this space at the bottom, which we still have the icons and footnotes. There's already so much on the menu. I think picture icons are too much, so I'll keep it simple with type, and they can just be on a solid background. A square would be fine, but the S in the logo at the top is the only circle on the page, so maybe we use a circle. It would only make sense to use a V here. Sure, it could be vegan, but there's nothing vegan on the menu, so it should be fine. Then we have gluten-free and kids-friendly. Last, we have our footnotes, and let's add that additional asterisk I mentioned earlier. A couple things here. They're using a hyphen. In theory, it could be a colon, but we could also use an M dash. Hyphen should only be used for hyphenated words. I noticed they used an Oxford comma in the disclaimer, so we should be consistent. In order to fill this space, I think the best way to do this is to create a container for our content, in this case, a simple box. Since the box aligns perfectly with the grid, we can organize the content inside however we want. This can be done 2 ways, like this. Of the 2, I prefer the bottom option. Now add all the icons and asterisks, and that's our layout. Now we can add the original background color. I'm going to adjust the contrast so it's lighter. This blue isn't great, so maybe we shift towards cyan. They did have that large S in the back, but I don't see the need for it, so I think this works. As we always do, we explore other ways to do this. I did add the cocktails to this, so let's remove it so we have an option with less menu items. I'll also remove the other elements to focus on that. These could run full column, which would look like this. It probably feels better on the right side. There's a pocket at the bottom of the middle column, so we can add our legend in this space. The right column doesn't really have to align, but if you wanted to, you could add a line above and below to fill the space. On this left side, it can be whatever you want. Let's try the logo. It probably feels better at the bottom, and it needs to get larger. Sure. You don't need the logo to scream so loud. What if we did something like this? And then the logo could be small in the leftover space. They had the S as a background element, which we could try. This is working better than the original for me because at least you can see what it is. I really don't love it, but let's say they are a client and is adamant that they want this element. We would need to figure out a way to make it work. You could try it at the top, and then let's add social in back. This feels less bad. White space is quite nice below. If you really wanted to, you could bring the disclaimer over to this column. Since we have so much white space, we don't need the double line. The S above has a thick underline, so we can just mimic that, and then I'll align it to the bottom of the right column. All right, I think I convinced myself that I'm fine with this now. Let's try some options that are a complete departure from this. I'll start with the appetizer since everything will follow suit after. This is currently sitting on a 3-column grid. I'm going to switch to my favorite grid, 7 columns. Now we align to the grid. I want to change the styling. By changing the styling completely, it allows you to approach the page with fresh eyes. Outside of the typeface changes, I remove the icons and type them out with parentheses. I also moved the price to the end because the right alignment was really limiting. we add our salads, and then we can anchor this to the bottom of the margin. I'll drop in the mains and sides, which I've anchored to the top of the margin. The logo can fit very nicely in the top left. I want to move the right column down so the line aligns to the L. Now we can just add the missing info. There's this nice column of white space in the middle, which I'll use for our disclaimer. It's definitely floating, so it needs something to anchor it. We could do something like this. Oops, too big. And then the rest of the info can fit at the bottom right. I'm going to move the disclaimer box down so it's centered between the top of the appetizers and the top of the black box. Changing the grid really allows you to explore very different layouts. This is still a clean execution of the menu. It feels much lighter, yes, slightly softer typography, which balances out the heaviness of the subheads. Let's add some color. Since I removed the full color background, it allowed us to add color to the type. I want to do one more. Nothing too crazy, but I'm going to change the subheads to a script typeface. For all the options, my columns have been equal. For this layout, I want some contrast in width, but I'll also design it in a bento box style. Here is our border. The logo can go at the top, and we can section this off. I'll drop in the appetizers and salads on the left with a thinner column, and then we can section these off as well. Now our mains and sides. Finally, our subsidiary info. Great. I'll clean up the type real quick, fixing all the widows. I do want an element of overlap. I can do that by dropping a very subtle grid background in the back. Let's add some color. I think we need another color. The script font feels pretty casual, so we can try an angled stroke behind the subheads. The yellow is nice. I think I'll stop there. Here's the original menu, and here are all the options. I wish you all a wonderful 2024. Check out some content on the channel, and I'll see you next time.